and welcome to another edition of winemastery.co.uk. My name's John Lightfoot. This is
Martin Fowkes.
And we're here to talk about English wine in a particular vineyard, the Three Choirs Vineyards here in Gloucestershire. Now, Martin, you're the proprietor of this marvellous establishment?
I'm the winemaker. Yeah,
you're the winemaker?
Director.
Oh,
yes.
Well. Okay, sounds like a lot of responsibility, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I've got people I can delegate to and blame.
So how long have you been in the wine?
I had my first bit of work experience here in 1984.
Okay, wow.
And I've been here ever since.
So you started at 10?
Well, that would be a nice idea. Yes, yeah, a little bit older than that.
So this is your first wine experience? You started here and...
Yeah, I trained in agriculture and horticulture.
Okay.
So I had an interest in vineyards, and I actually came here initially as a vineyard worker and manager. And then things sort of progressed. The wine bug caught me, and I've done a bit of travelling in between and done a few vintages in other countries along the way.
Yeah.
And but always had my heart here and kept going here.
Oh, fantastic! So when did this vineyard actually start? When did it start? When was it planted?
Well,
when was it produced?
We used to be an apple and blackcurrant farm.
Okay.
So it was a proven fruit growing area, and my father-in-law was very keen to do something a little bit mad, and the owner of the farm then was a gentleman called Alan McKechnie, who owned the wine company, the McKechnie Wine Company in Ledbury, a little shop.
Okay.
So they planted half an acre.
Right.
And 1973, 3 years on, you get your first crop. So some of you might be old enough to remember 1976.
I do.
And in true optimistic fashion, everybody thought this weather's here to stay, so let's plant some more up.
Okay.
And so the vineyard sort of grew from that point right through till into the 80s and into the 90s. We've now got 75 acres.
Wow. Okay.
And we produce about 200,000 bottles a year.
200,000. Whoa, that's a lot of wine.
And in the winery, on top of that, we make wine for another 40 or 50 vineyards that bring their grapes to us. So the winery itself does.
So it's almost like a separate operation. Presumably, that part of it is. You do your own, and then it's almost sort of subcontracting out the. And that, I guess, makes a lot of sense in terms of the overhead, because you want to because it's a lot of downtime otherwise.
Absolutely, yes, and we're able to invest in the best possible equipment.
Yeah.
And small producers are able to benefit from that equipment as well. It obviously helps us to sweat the assets a little bit harder, so having contract wine making as part of our business is a very important thing for us.
Yeah, and we're here in Gloucestershire. So it's Gloucestershire. I mean, most people I think of Sussex as the English producing wine area. So is Gloucestershire quite a big area for wine, or are you one of the few vineyards in Gloucestershire?
There's a few in Gloucestershire. There's a few more in exactly the same way as in the southeast. There's a growth of vineyards. There's a growth in Gloucestershire, but we've probably been the main vineyard for many years.
Yeah.
And we've really developed from a farming background rather than from a wine background.
Yeah.
So we planted varieties that we thought would grow well. We knew the site was good because of we're near the Evesham Vale, and we've got the right sort of microclimates here, so we get above average sunshine and below average rainfall. So it was a calculated risk, if you like, that vines would do well here. Okay. And gradually the apples have disappeared and the vines have come in their place.
Do you have any blackcurrants or apples left, or?
No. There was some land that was sold off many years ago that actually is still being farmed as apples.
Okay.
But
is there a problem for you in terms of, if you're presumably you're growing and expanding, and does that become a problem in terms of you're then constrained by not being able to grow anymore, or?
No, I think that we've been at 75 acres now for 15-20 years, and our aspirations to grow are I say limited. I mean, yes, of course we want to grow, but to be able to respond to the marketplace by planting more vines is not necessarily, doesn't quite work for us.
Okay.
And one of those reasons is that when you've set up your business and your business model, if you plant more vines to produce more grapes, then those grapes are going to get used in the lower end of your returns. So if I wanted to supply nationally to a supermarket, I might have to look for more grapes, but I can't do that immediately.
Yeah.
it's a long-term project. We're talking 5 or 6 years before you get a crop. So I think we're quite happy with our estate size, but we do have arrangements with other farmers who've got vines, and there is a market for grapes between vineyards as well. So there's always a way of finding more if you need to.
And I guess it's not, in any case, it's not just like about sort of finding a piece more land. It's actually what way it's facing, whether it's on the slope.
Yes,
and I guess
absolutely.
the actual soil itself, because people talk about having chalk and all that sort of. Is that for drainage, I assume, just to?
Well, yes. I mean, there's a big argument about terroir at the moment as to how much effect it has on wines. I believe that wines on different soils give you different characteristics. We're on quite sandy soils here, and I think that gives really good fruit character. We might sacrifice a little bit of steely backbone in place compared to some of the wines in the southeast, but we are very much a fruit-driven style of wine, even through to our sparkling wine as well. So, yeah, it's horses for courses. The drainage is really, really important. And but our challenge in the vineyard is vines being too vigorous and actually us having too much growth and having to control it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so, that when you say too much growth, that in terms of they just keep them trimmed back.
Yes, if a vine has its own way, it'll just spread itself over the ground. It's a sort of creeping plant. Okay. And it will grow and grow. If it's feeling the luxury of being able to grow, it has less need to produce fruit. Okay. So it needs a little bit of stress and a little bit of controlling in order to maximise its flowering and fruit set. Okay. So that's what happens in the vineyard. We need to control it. We keep competition by leaving grass in between the rows. We've got quite a large trellis system, so there's a lot of leaf growth there. So it's these are things that we've learnt over the years and work really well for us.
And when I arrived, I know you were talking to people about the sort of carbon footprint and being very environmentally conscious. Is that something that you do because you feel it's the right thing to do, or is that something that the market is sort of pushing you towards?
I think there's an element of both. And for example, at the moment we're putting a lot of effort into eliminate herbicides from our entire estate, and I think that by the end of this year we'll be there with that. It's great to be able to say that we're doing it. It has interest for the marketplace. We can't charge more for our wines for it, so we don't benefit in that point of view. Yeah. But I do benefit from not spending money on herbicides. So there's an economical benefit as well as a social and marketing benefit. But I'm very keen to be seen to be as green as we can. Yeah. And it just seems a logical thing in this day and age to do that. Yeah, absolutely. And how do people get hold of your wines? Is it sort of available nationwide, or? 20 years ago we used to be very strong in the supermarket sector. And we had a few smaller crops in the early 2000s, and we took that opportunity to opt out of some of the supermarket. And that actually opened up the market hugely in other areas. Right. So now there's a far greater interest from local stockists, local independent merchants, and hotels, restaurants. We're still regionally available in one supermarket. Okay. And we have a very, very good relationship with the Wine Society, who sell a lot of wine through their sort of membership. So the marketplace has definitely changed enormously over the last 20 years. Okay. And do you is it available on? Do you have a website? Is it available? Yeah, absolutely. Very important that we ever since we started, we've always sold about 25 or 30% directly from the farm gate. Really? Yeah. So that would be through the shop, through our restaurant, or through our hotel rooms and in the minibars and things. So it's a very, very important part of what we do. Yeah. And of course mail order is always possible as well. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with today's Amazon world, then that's becoming perhaps more the norm for people to have that sort of stuff delivered in any case. Yes. And that you just mentioned your restaurant and your hotel. So this has become probably one of the prominent tourist spots in the area. Would that be fair to say? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in an area that's not quite on the tourist track, so we're a little bit peaceful around here, which people generally like, and we find that we've got quite a good catchment area. People coming out from London for a weekend, and after all, people go away for long weekends to Europe and queue up in the airports for hours and hours. You can just hop in a car, and within 2 hours you're in a vineyard, and you've got nice views like this, and the sun's always shining.
I always my of course. My experience is as well is the wine never tastes as good as it does when you're sitting in the place that produced it. It's always the same. I think you're just focusing that much more on it.
I think it's the whole experience, isn't it? And I think that's the beauty of wine, really. And most people link their favourite wines with a really good experience. In some other way as well.
Yeah,
I don't see there's anything wrong with that. It sort of triggers the right senses, and that's the way the world works.
Yeah. So the only thing I haven't asked is what sort of wine you produce. You know, is it dry white wine? You know, I presume it's not red, but I don't know.
We produce a wide range. We do 2 or 3 sparkling wines.
Okay.
We do dry white wines through to medium dry-ish white wines. We tend not to use the term medium dry. We tend to talk about wines being off dry.
Okay.
I would say, generally speaking, I find that our wines work better with just a touch of residual sugar, just to help bring the fruit out and add a bit of balance. So bone dry wines are probably rarer in the UK. But they do exist, and if the conditions are right, I might make one.
Right.
But I think that the marketplace is really looking for this maximising of fruit character, and that's what we're keen to do now. I do a late harvest when we can, which is probably 6 or 7 years in 10.
Okay.
And I do a noble harvest, which is probably about 2 years in 10.
So what's the difference between those?
Well, a late harvest is just leaving grapes very late to actually get good ripeness.
Okay.
And then you can make a nice sweet wine from the natural fruit and stop the fermentation.
Okay.
Noble harvest is where the grapes get infected with botrytis, so it's a little bit more like Sauterne.
Okay.
So the actual yield per vine and induced yield per grape is tiny.
Yeah.
So when we do make that, we're probably making 400 or 500 bottles, which would only be sold through our restaurant.
Okay.
So it's a wonderful thing for me as a winemaker. I've got the scope to make these special little parcels, which we can just filter through the right avenues.
Yes.
And it's always nice for people that go into the restaurant to find a couple of wines that they won't find anywhere else.
Quite.
And
I can understand that.
And they'll probably never taste again, because by the time they come back, it'll have gone, and they'll be on to another vintage of something completely different.
Yes.
But we also make red wine. We do reds out of Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Which is a variety that's growing in popularity in the UK for red as well as sparkling. And we do a Ravens Hill, which is a red blend of Regent and Rondo, which are 2 varieties that have been developed in Germany for cool climate viticulture.
Okay.
Germany are great allies for us in pushing the technical boundaries for vines. They're net importers of wine.
Okay.
And so they are very interested in seeing new varieties perform better and for production to increase. So there's a lot of work that gets done in a couple of research stations in Germany.
Wow.
And we benefit from that enormously.
So presumably they do the equivalent of technical papers, and then you pick up from that.
Yes, and there must be in our vineyard, which we planted in 1973. I would say that there must be 5 or 6 varieties that didn't exist then that we're now growing.
Wow, really? Okay. And most of those from the German research?
German research that probably started, these varieties take a long time to develop, so they were probably in development when we started.
Yes, of course.
And but they didn't sort of hit the marketplace until a little bit later on. And they're interesting because not only are they just suited to the cool climate, they also have greater disease resistance, so they enable us to do better job in the vineyard to try and get our sustainability to the maximum.
So how many different types of grapes do you have in the vineyard?
I've got about 16 different varieties.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
And do you have to treat them differently in terms of?
Some of them you do. I mean, some of them are very similar and sort of sit alongside each other very easily. But because of that, our harvest is very long. But it spreads the risk in the vineyard. You know, there's always something that's going to hit the right time for a perfect flowering. Varieties that will miss the frosts, varieties that will ripen early. So our harvest goes through for about 6 weeks because those varieties ripen at different times.
And that must also help in terms of physically harvesting the grapes, because I imagine if you've got them all
Oh, yes,
all on the same night, it'd be a little bit difficult.
It spreads the workload nicely.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's also important because consistency could be highlighted as one of the biggest challenges for us, because we can get very different levels of ripeness, different structure in the grape every year.
Yeah.
Probably more so than when you go nearer the equator. We don't quite get the consistency of yields. And so one of the, there's plenty of technical and winemaking things that can be done to help, but there's nothing that replaces blending. And so by having different varieties, we can blend consistency so that people don't have to worry that the 2016 might be nice, but the 2018
tastes completely different. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So in terms of moving forward, you basically, I imagine, whilst you'll keep an eye out for any more development in terms of research, you're pretty much set, I guess, because if you're making successful wines, that people will enjoy and really love, it's a little bit risky to say, well, actually, I'll take those vines out and I'll put these in instead, and not know whether people are going to...
But nothing stays still, does it? I think you can be in danger of being a bit complacent and then become out of fashion, and other people come up with new ideas. So you've got to keep up with what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a phase of evolution rather than revolution.
Okay.
When we're planting new varieties, new vines, then generally speaking, the variety we pull out won't be the variety that we put in.
Okay.
For example, we try and replant 3 acres every year. Last year was Chardonnay, next year is Bacchus. Okay. So we are moving without even realising it to cope with the market, where we see the market demand.
And just remember from the beginning of talking to you that you said that they last for about 20-25 years, so actually there is that natural, and then you take that opportunity of saying,
absolutely,
do we want to? Okay, fantastic. So in terms of, I'll put the website details below. Is there any bad time to come? I mean, for example, when you're harvesting, or is it a bad time to come and have a look around?
Christmas Day is not great.
No.
We try and have that day off. I mean, there's always things going on here, and even a nice cold winter's day is still a very nice time to get out and have a walk, and then come and sit by the fire. And drink a bit of wine. So I don't think there's a bad time. Obviously, the more popular times would tend to be the summer months. I think this is a beautiful time. The vines are growing, but they're not overgrown, and they're all in nice lines. The potential for the crops there. Yeah. We get long days, so you've got very nice evenings to enjoy sat outside. Yeah. This is a particularly favourite time of mine, probably because if there's a quieter time, maybe it's around about now, where we've bottled last year's crop, or just finishing off bottling and just thinking about cleaning tanks ready for next year. Right. And then it's full on again. So the cycle starts again. The cycle goes on. Yes. Fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to have I missed in terms of what we've been talking about? I don't think so. I think one of the things that's very important to us is moving with the times, and our wines are all suitable for vegetarian and vegan, which has become a very important part of marketing nowadays. And I think that everybody's expecting us to do as much as we can for the environment, and so our sustainability policy is being developed as we speak, and we're trying to do the right things for the right reasons, and produce a wine and a business that's going to be here for many, many years to come. I'm sure it will be. And I always love talking to guys and girls like you, because you're so passionate, and your love for what you're producing is so evident. It's really nice. Thank you for your time. It's a great job, so I wouldn't change it for the world. And long may English wine prosper and grow. So absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you're busy, and really appreciate your time. And we'll see you in the next episode, guys. Ciao.